Hey YouTube, thought I would talk a little bit about what's happening to us. If we look around, it's like 50% of people in the United States couldn't handle a $400 emergency, or orders from retail orders to or store orders to China are down 40%. So what's happening? Why are we broke? So a lot of this, in my opinion, is related to the Great Reset. And I wanted to talk about the Great Reset just a little bit, and then in follow-on videos, I'll maybe show some projects that I did that will help to get through the Great Reset. Or maybe we're not going to make our way through it. It just depends on what happens. But ways of getting by. But the Great Reset Initiative is an economic recovery plan drawn by the World Economic Forum, of which Klaus Schwab is the CEO. Klaus Schwab described three core components of the Great Reset. These are creating conditions for a stakeholder economy. And who are the stakeholders? If you get, I'm not going to buy, he wrote a book about it, but I'm not going to buy the book. But all I see when I search on it are global stakeholders. So I don't think we're included as a stakeholder in this economy. So anyhow, three core components are a global stakeholder economy, building a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable way, utilizing environmental, social, and government metrics. There's the ESG again. They're going to sneak in with the financing and control things via, instead of our governments controlling things. Harnessing the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is another book by Klaus. Here's how he describes how economics have evolved, Schwab said that the first industrial revolution was powered by water and steam to mechanize production. They used water, used streams to drive hammers to hammer out nails, to grind flour, whatever. Through electrical power, the second industrial revolution introduced mass production. Electronics and information technologies automated the production process in the third industrial revolution. Alvin Toffler has written about this. It's pretty interesting. I haven't read that in years. In the fourth industrial revolution, which Klaus describes, the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres have become blurred in this current revolution, which began with the digital revolution in the mid-1990s, is characterized by a fusion of technologies. This fusion of technologies include fields such as artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, material science, energy storage, and quantum computing. So, and if you're up on the latest, this thing here that everybody had to get, there's a quantum dot theory associated with it, and there's an electrical component of it, which, if you know anything about quantum physics, how you can do something on one side of the world and it changes something on the other side of the world instantaneously, it would appear there's like a master switch in there. But I don't pretend to know what their quantum electronics in that is, but it's something to think about. So his three core components of the Great Reset are creating conditions for a stakeholder economy, harnessing the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution, and building in a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable way using environmental, social, and governance metrics, ESG. And a metric is just the way you measure something. And I don't know who elected Klaus Schwab to run the world, but a lot of people pay attention to him, a lot of leaders. So we know. So the Great Reset was to reset after things recovered from this. Now we know more people who had this are dying percentage-wise than people who didn't have it. So we know that there's something going on with that that's intentional. So in a post world, after all that, if that were to end, it is reasonable to expect that more people will want improvements in risk management, in social and medical safety nets, and will want more attention paid to scientific experts. So this is all about Agenda, if you remember Agenda 21, I mean now I know we're working on Agenda 2030, but Agenda 21 was all about removing elected representation and installing experts. Now that, who knows if that would work or not? We won't get a chance to find out because we know Dr. Birx admitted to lying, the 6 feet, she just made it up. And Fauci said that, these things that cover you, he said they don't work. So they're not listening to the experts. They're going in accordance with politics to get something done, whatever that is. So this new hierarchy of values will call for a reset on the way we deal with climate change, which, like the pandemic, is a global phenomenon. No one can self-isolate from climate change, so we all need to act in advance and in solidarity. All right. According to a May 15th, 2020 World Economic Forum article, COVID, this offers an opportunity to reset and reshape the world in a way that is more aligned with the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Goals, SDG. So I guess it didn't work good enough for Agenda 21. So we need some additional horsepower to get people to toe the line for 2030. Another post-COVID concern raised by the World Economic Forum is food security, including the risk of disruptions to food supply chains and the need for global policy coordination to prevent food protectionism from becoming the post-pandemic new normal. So I guess, we're going to give up. We need to give up sovereignty and send our food to other places, even though we're a net food importer, and every other country as well. So we're no longer allowed to take care of make ourselves a priority. In her June 3rd, 2020 keynote address opening the Great Reset Forum, a joint initiative of the World Energy Council, the king, is he the king of Wales? Because he was the Prince of Wales here. But Kristalina Georgieva, managing director of the International Monetary Fund, said there has been a massive injection of fiscal stimulus to help countries deal with this crisis, and that it was of paramount importance that this growth should lead to greener, smarter, and a fairer world in the future. So, greener and smarter. These people who have probably never done anything, probably don't even dress themselves in the morning, are going to decide what's greener and what's smarter. They had the CEO of GM, that female. Can't think of her name, but she was showing off the new electronic car, and the reporter asked her, says, "Well, where does it plug into?" And his reference was, hey, this has to be powered by the grid. So he says, well, where does this plug into? Well, she says, to the building there. The car was by a building. And he's like, no, no, no. This thing has to be powered by the grid. How are you going to power it? And she really didn't have an answer. And this is the CEO of GM. So, government investments and government incentives for private investors could support low carbon and climate resilient growth. You know, government incentives, government investments. Well, where does all this money go? This FTX deal. Watch. You're going to find out that was government money that got in. Well, we know government money did. It went to Ukraine. Ukraine was with FTX, invested money, and somewhere between 27 million, and now they're even saying, some people are saying $1 billion came back to help Democrats run in their races. I believe the Senate race in Pennsylvania spent $300 million. Where'd that money come from? And, a fairer economy. Well, didn't our government just award $200 million contract for battery production to China? China Joe, having people in government like our president with an allegiance to China is expensive. So this is kind of a repeat, but in June 2020, Klaus Schwab described the three core components of the Great Reset. The first includes creating conditions for a stakeholder economy, of which you or I are not stakeholders, improving policies and agreements on taxes, regulation, fiscal policies, and trade to result in fairer outcomes. Well, what does fairer mean? Who's going to measure that? The second component addresses how the large-scale pandemic spending programs with private investments and pension funds could improve on the old system by building one that is more resilient, equitable, and sustainable over the long term by building green urban infrastructure and creating incentives for industries to improve their track record on environmental, social, and government ESG metrics. So Biden just sent $38 billion to pension funds, I believe, in the Midwest. Is that fair? Is that equitable? To the other pension funds? For these union jobs. So to buy votes, have the Federal Reserve churn up the printing press there. And what's happened to relations with foreign countries with all this? And then this is why I think it's not going to go. The BRICS now, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Is S for Saudi? They comprise, I think, maybe 80% of the population of the Earth. And then Russia has their own NATO. It's the Collective Security Treaty Organization. I mean, right now it's just 6 former Soviet states. However, they have agreements with. They have security arrangements with Saudi Arabia. We found in yesterday's paper, they're providing 5th generation fighters to Iran, and they're already providing training on their Su-35, and they're going to sell some of them. I believe Iran is still flying RL F-14s, and so they haven't upgraded their. As I understand it, they've not upgraded their fighters since the 80s. So Russia's making gains. In the comment, according to King Charles, the economic recovery must put the world on a path to sustainability, which would include carbon pricing. So I guess we have another little leader dictating to the world. He emphasized that the private sector would be the main drivers of the plan. The market should adapt to the current reality by aiming for fairer results. Here we go again. Who's going to measure that? Ensuring that investments are aimed at mutual progress, including accelerating ecologically friendly investments to start a fourth industrial revolution, creating digital and public infrastructure. So, according to Schwab, he just wants to, he likes capitalism, but he's going to make it a better capitalism. So the definition of capitalism is an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. Now that's anything but what's going on now. We know that the military-industrial complex and big pharma, of course, I guess that's private, but and what's fascism? It's the use of private property by the government. So they're using them, sending that money over to them to send back to our politicians here to run for office. So we talked about the fourth industrial revolution. Then this is kind of interesting. Ida Auken, a Danish MP, you'll remember this, who is also a young global leader and a member of the Council on Cities and Urbanization, wrote an article that was uploaded to the official WEF, World Economic Forum website, and later published by Forbes, in which she imagined how technology can improve our lives by 2030 if the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals were realized through the fusion of technologies. In the scenario presented by Auken, the emergence and application of new digitized technologies to sectors such as communication, energy, transportation, and accommodation would result in greater access and decreased cost, ultimately leading to a complete elimination of costs, eventually leading to the end of lifestyle diseases, climate change, the refugee crisis, environmental degradation, completely congested cities, water pollution, air pollution, social unrest, and unemployment, as well as other early 21st century crises. By the scenario's 2030 endpoint, anything that had once been a product was now a freely available service, obviating any need for personal ownership of goods or real estate. But wait a minute, we're capitalists. We're going to control the country with private enterprise, but they're not going to own anything? So, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth here. So I would just urge you to look up the Great Reset and see how that matches with what's going on here. And then then the article goes on to other countries, and I'll just the U.S. just has one paragraph here. I'll read it. A January 23rd, 2021 Financial Times article said that policymakers around the world are anticipating President Biden's reset on trade, tax, and climate. President-elect Joe Biden had announced in November 2020 John Kerry will be appointed as U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, and Kerry was confirmed in this position on Inauguration Day. January 20th, 2021, Kerry had participated in one of the Great Reset dialogues on how to rebuild the social contract in a post-COVID world. Kerry said that COVID would offer the big moment that opened the possibility for the Great Reset. He said the WEF would play a significant role in refining how to respond to climate change and inequalities that were laid bare as a consequence of. So, how can Kerry say the WEF is going to play a significant role? What branch of our government are they? We know Kerry was in Vietnam. He was on one of those river boats, and he was wounded. And he had his certification. Whenever you get an award in the service, they write what they call a certification on you. And he had it rewritten 2, maybe 3 times till he had, like, a very senior admiral wrote it. And I think he was actually in Congress at the time, years later. So, he's got a damaged, his morality is damaged, that he has to have the self-aggrandizement that he suffers from. So, but anyhow, so I know there, and especially with what's going on. So I think Vladimir Putin has said the globalism is dead. Okay, he's in BRICS. That's 80% of the world population wise. But until then, and because of his little deal in Ukraine, our energy companies are going to be sending that energy overseas. So I mean, I look for us to have high energy costs. So, so if you're going to stay warm, you're going to have to move to the country. You're going to have to have wood heat. You're going to have your own source of water. These houses with, I got this from someone else, but these houses with umbilical cords to the grid are dinosaurs. I mean, you want to be able to, you want to at least have backup systems if you're going to stay on grid. So to that end, I'm going to do a few short videos to show what I've been doing around here for energy, and I just wanted to explain why. So thanks for watching, and talk to you next time.